The galaxy had known many empires. Some rose through trade, others through war, but none had ever risen like Earth. When humanity finally stepped beyond their small blue world, the older species watched with amusement. These soft creatures with their short lives and fragile bodies seemed hardly worth noticing. They had no natural weapons, no thick skin, no venom. They were, by galactic standards, utterly unremarkable. That was the first mistake the galaxy made about humans. They were a small species. They sat on the edge of the Orion Arm, far from the major trade routes and political centers of the galaxy. They stood barely 4 feet tall, with soft fur and large, dark eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness of the universe. Their voices were gentle, almost musical. They had no army. They had no fleet. What they had was kindness, and in the cold vastness of space, kindness was often seen as weakness. For 3,000 years they had been servants. The dominion of a brutal empire of reptilian conquerors had claimed their world long before any could remember freedom. They worked in the mines. They cleaned the ships. They raised the children of their masters while their own young were taken and sold across the stars. It was a quiet horror, one that the rest of the galaxy chose not to see. Then came the day that changed everything. A human transport ship called the Starling had been passing through space. It was a civilian vessel, carrying families to a new colony world. Among the passengers was a little girl named Maya. She was 7 years old, with brown curls and a gap-toothed smile. Her parents were engineers, hopeful people looking for a fresh start on a distant planet. They never made it. The patrol ship intercepted the Starling without warning. The Dominion claimed the humans had violated their space, though everyone knew this was a lie. They simply wanted slaves, and humans were new, interesting, and weak. They boarded the ship. They killed the adults who resisted. They took the rest as property. Maya watched her parents die in front of her. She was thrown into a cage with other survivors and transported to a mining colony on a dead moon. There, she was assigned to a work group led by a named. Was old by her people's standards. She had spent 60 years in bondage. She had seen countless horrors. She had learned to keep her head down and survive. But when she looked at the small human child, something inside her broke open. Maya was crying, calling for her mother. Her hands were cut from the rough metal of the cage. She was so small, so lost, so completely alone in the darkness of space. Made a choice. She took Maya under her care. She hid her from the worst of the overseers. She gave the child her own food when rations were cut. She taught her the language and told her stories of freedom, of a time before when her people had danced under 3 moons and sung songs to the stars. At night, when Maya screamed from nightmares, held her and hummed soft melodies until the child could sleep again. This went on for 8 months. 8 months of stolen moments. 8 months of risking everything for a child who was not her own, who belonged to a species she had never met before. The other watched in silence. Some thought was foolish. Others felt a spark of something they had forgotten long ago. Hope. Then they discovered what was doing. The punishment for showing kindness to slaves was death. The overseer, a massive creature with scales like armor and teeth like knives, dragged into the center of the work camp. He announced that she would be made an example. He raised his weapon. Maya screamed and ran toward, throwing herself in front of the old. The child spread her tiny arms as if she could somehow shield her protector from the blow. The overseer laughed. He pushed Maya aside and brought down his blade. But he never finished the strike. A sound tore through the sky. It was a roar unlike anything the colony had ever heard. Ships dropped from the clouds, sleek and black, moving faster than the eye could follow. They bore no markings except for a single symbol, a blue and green circle, Earth. The human military had come. It had taken them 8 months to find the Starling survivors. 8 months of searching, of tracking, of quiet fury building in the hearts of every human who heard what had happened. Earth did not forget its children. Earth did not abandon them. And Earth did not forgive those who harmed them. The overseer died before he hit the ground. The soldiers who poured from the ships moved with a precision that the galaxy had never seen. They were not superhuman. They were not enhanced by technology beyond understanding. They were simply humans, and they had come for one of their own. Within 3 hours, the colony was liberated. Within 3 days, the fleet in the sector was destroyed. Within 3 weeks, the Dominion of received a message from the United Earth government. It was simple. It was clear. It was terrifying. You took our child. You made her a slave. You would have killed the one who protected her. For this, there will be a reckoning. They laughed at first. They had conquered dozens of species. They had crushed rebellions and burned worlds. What could one small planet of soft, short-lived creatures do to them? They sent their war fleet. They sent their greatest warriors. They sent everything they had. It was not enough. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not follow the old rules of galactic warfare. They did not seek honor in combat or glory in victory. They sought only one thing: results. They struck without warning. They attacked from angles they could not predict. They used tactics that seemed suicidal until they worked. They kept coming, wave after wave, generation after generation, never stopping, never slowing, never breaking. The war lasted 7 years. When it was over, the Dominion of was gone. Their empire was dust. Their name became a warning whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy. This is what happens when you harm a human child. But that was not the end of the story. When Maya was rescued, she did not want to leave. She clung to the old and refused to let go. The soldiers who had come to save her did not understand at first. Then Maya told them everything. She told them how had protected her, how had fed her and held her and loved her when no one else would, how had been willing to die for her. The soldiers listened. They looked at the small alien with the sad eyes and the gentle voice. They saw the scars on her hands from years of hard labor. They saw the kindness in her face, and they understood. When the human fleet returned to Earth, was with them. So were the other from the colony. So were requests from human commanders asking for something that had never been done before: permanent protection for an alien species. The debate in the United Earth government lasted for months. Some argued that humanity had no obligation to the. Others pointed out the risks of taking on such a responsibility. But in the end, one voice cut through all the arguments. It was Maya's. She stood before the council, still small, still young, but no longer lost. She told them what had done for her. She told them that there were good people, kind people, people who deserved better than what the galaxy had given them. She asked, with all the simple honesty of a child, why humans could not be kind too. The vote was unanimous. The United Earth government issued a declaration. The species was now under the official protection of Earth. Any attack on them would be considered an attack on humanity itself. Any harm done to them would be answered with the full force of human vengeance. The galaxy heard this declaration and trembled. Over the years that followed, there was liberated. Those who had been scattered across the stars were found and brought home. Human engineers helped rebuild their cities. Human soldiers stood guard over their borders. Human teachers worked alongside elders to preserve their language and their songs. And the old slave who had risked everything for a human child was honored in ways she never imagined. Maya, as she grew older, visited her often. She brought her flowers from Earth and stories from the human worlds. She introduced her to her own children when the time came. The bond between them never broke. The other species of the galaxy watched all of this with growing unease. They began to understand something important about humans. These creatures were not weak. They were not soft. They were something far more dangerous. They were loyal. They remembered kindness and they repaid it 1,000-fold. They remembered cruelty and they repaid that too. Word spread through the star lanes. Do not harm humans. Do not harm those they love. And above all, do not harm those who show kindness to their children. A century after Maya's rescue, a young stood before the Galactic Assembly. She was the first of her people to hold such a position. She spoke of gratitude. She spoke of hope. She spoke of a future where kindness was not weakness but strength. When she finished, the human delegation rose and applauded. Behind them, the flag of Earth hung in the great hall, blue and green, a small world, a fierce heart. They had protected one human child. In return, humanity had protected their entire species. Some called it excessive, some called it foolish. The humans called it justice. And throughout the galaxy, in whispered conversations and secret councils, the older species revised their opinions of the young race from the blue planet. They were no longer amusing. They were no longer unremarkable. They were something new in the galaxy. They were humans, and they would never, ever forget.